All right, so we're going to start off with astronomy in the news. There's been an awful lot in the news this month, so we're going to try and get through it as quickly as we can. We're going to start off with Comet Lovejoy. This was found on August 17th, 2014, by Terry Lovejoy from Brisbane in Australia. The cool thing about this comet is every single second it's spewing out as much alcohol as 500 bottles of wine. This is according to Nicolas Biver of the Paris Observatory in France. And obviously, French astronomers would measure the output in terms of bottles of wine. There's a whole bunch of organic molecules and stuff coming from this. Is Dr. Comet in the room? No. Dr. Comet is observing remotely West Texas, and we tried to persuade him to come tonight and sit there and observe in the corner, but he did not. So you can ask him about it next month. It's very cool.
Next up, we have the solar wind blows Mars's atmosphere. So this is an artist's rendering, just to be clear. But a recent study came out saying that Mars, we had an idea that Mars had an atmosphere more similar to Earth's with oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide, stuff like that. But it lost it somewhere over the last few billion years. And the new results came out recently saying that it was probably the solar wind, high-energy particles being blown away from the sun that stripped off the atmosphere of Mars. Earth was able to hold on to its atmosphere. Mars got its atmosphere stripped. So that's probably what happened to the atmosphere of Mars.
So recently there was a big meeting called Division for Planetary Sciences, DPS, as part of the American Astronomical Society. This is a huge meeting that covers all of planetary science, and our friend Dr. Comet was there taking notes for us. We've just cherry-picked some of the best results because there was so much. There was obviously an awful lot of news about Pluto, some of which made it into the press. These are two mountains on Pluto, which appear to actually be ice volcanoes. A cool quote from one of the postdocs who's working on the New Horizons mission is, "If you see a mountain with a hole on top, it's probably a volcano."
So they've been naming, astronomers who have been working on the New Horizons mission have been naming parts of Pluto and its biggest moon, Charon, with sort of unofficial names. They might get official names eventually. So on Pluto, they're named after some real scientists and some mythical creatures or godlike creatures. And then on Charon, in the lower plot, you see a few sci-fi ones. And so if you're not quite nerdy enough to know all of those names, there are graphical representations out there. So you see Kirk and Spock, of course, Vader, and various TARDISes and Sauron, and Firefly, one of my favorites. So yeah, go Google Pluto and Charon, and maybe some of these names will actually stick officially.
So in addition to Charon, Pluto has these 4 other moons. This is an animation of what we've discovered about the orbits of these other moons. They are spinning like mad. This is so cool. This is all, again, coming out of the New Horizons mission. You also notice the illustrations of these moons at the bottom. They look kind of weird and irregular. So it's believed that they were actually formed by multiple moons kind of colliding and merging into one, which is really, really cool. So the other really cool thing about this is all of this stuff that we're getting about Pluto is based on only 1/5 of all of the data that New Horizons has collected. As we've mentioned before, the data rate from Pluto back to us is really, really slow. So we don't have all of the data available yet. So over the next year or so, we're going to get this trickle of more and more information and more high-resolution images.
So speaking of New Horizons, they fired a couple of the little engines on New Horizons and sent it towards its next target, a lovingly named KBO-2 2014 MU69. This is a smaller object in the Kuiper Belt, similar-ish to Pluto, very old. It's about 1 billion miles further away than Pluto. And so New Horizons is trucking towards that. It's supposed to get there around January 1st of 2019. The problem is NASA hasn't actually approved the funding for that many years. So New Horizons is on its way. Whether or not we fund it, it's still heading that way. So hopefully NASA will realize this is going to be really awesome and actually continue the funding through 2019.
And on the subject of really awesomely well-named things, PSOJ 318.5-22. Astronomers, as I always say, should never be allowed to name anything. So this is a rogue planet. What this means, it's a planet outside the solar system. It's not orbiting a star. It's just hanging out on its own. But it's been illuminated by a nearby star, enough that astronomers have been able to measure its atmosphere. It's cloudy, it's very hot, it's got dust storms, and slight chance of showers of molten iron. Which I think puts our recent weather into perspective.
So here is a artist's representation, but based off of actual data. So here are about 500 exoplanets discovered through, let's see, October of 2015. This was put together by a graphic artist in Slovakia, but it uses the actual inferred temperature, density, radii, and sort of colors of what we think all these planets should be. So this is sort of realistic of what we think these look like. You've got things that are these hot Jupiters and Saturn-like things, Neptune, super Earths, dense diamond planets, all kinds of crazy stuff going on. I urge you to go search for this online and look at it on a very high-resolution screen. It's pretty.
So some of you may remember last month we talked about this thing. Another brilliantly named object, but also known as WTF-001, or Tabby's star, or the most mysterious star in our galaxy. This is a star that exhibits weird, irregular dips in its light, which is not consistent with something regular like a planet going around. And so some people have theorized that this could be alien megastructures surrounding a distant star. We also mentioned that our friend Dr. Trent Dupuis, who is leaning against the bar back there, is a co-author on this paper. So if you think it's nuts, go talk to him. No, they don't talk about megastructures. They talk about the boring explanation. We want it to be aliens. So an update on this star. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence, SETI, has actually been staring at it with a radio telescope for 2 weeks. Looking to see actual signals of potential civilizations. Haven't found anything yet, but if they had detected a signal, it would have had to be absurdly strong. So, nothing's ruled out yet. We shall see. How many light years away is this? I don't remember.
No questions during astronomy in the Ask Dr. Trent in the back. So happy 1000th GRB to Swift. So Swift is a NASA satellite that is looking for what's called gamma ray bursts. These are flashes, very quick flashes of gamma ray radiation, usually associated with exploding stars, supernova, the birth of black holes, like Professor Polwin was talking about. This mission is near and dear to my heart. This was one of the first projects I ever worked on in astronomy, was with Swift GRBs, and it was launched in 2004 when I was getting ready to finish up college. And now it has discovered its 1000th gamma ray burst. So that was a nice little milestone for it. And here's a map. The Milky Way goes across the center of this map. Here's all the GRBs that Swift has discovered, all 1,000. These are some of the furthest things we can see in the universe. So much, much further than the Milky Way, way outside the Milky Way. But this sort of gives you on the plane of the sky where all those 1,000 GRBs have gone off.
Okay, and to finish up, a recent event you may not have heard about was the groundbreaking of the giant Magellan Telescope. This is a telescope that our fearless leader Taft Armendroff talked about a few months ago. It's going to be the biggest telescope in the world when it's finally constructed down in Chile, and the University of Texas is a 10% partner. So normally when you're breaking ground on a construction project, you have this ceremony and someone with a golden shovel sticks it in the ground. So instead of doing that, the Chilean president hit a rock with a hammer. So that's what's going on up here in the top picture. That's the president right there. So our director, Taft Armendroff, was there. And you'll notice on the bottom left here are the flags of all the partner countries, and at the front is the Great Republic of Texas. No, it's actually the Chilean flag, but they're very similar. And at the bottom right there is what the site looks like currently. Hopefully it will look very different in just a few years.